So, Iron Man 3 was... it was interesting that this
is your first time seeing it.
This was my first time seeing, but I thought this was interesting that this was the first movie they did after the Avengers.
Yeah, and to see where they decided to go after that, because that's to follow up that movie.
Right. See, that's what I found.
You didn't know if they were going to continue forward with...
Which I assumed they would have. Because, like I said, I had not seen it up until this point, and I found it incredibly fascinating that this movie, because this whole time, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe had been building up to the Avengers, and then the Avengers kind of left off like there will be further adventures of the Avengers.
Yeah.
And the fact was, this movie was not really connected at all. The only thing that there was a connection with was that Tony Stark had PTSD derived from his actions in New York from the Avengers.
And you see some of the paranoia that eventually gets us
to Ultron.
Yes,
and I'll give that. But that was I'm talking about at the time.
That's very
at the time. No, I'm assuming everyone watched this and was like, that's odd. Like, they probably became so accustomed to everything being people joining up, and there's a lot of like teamwork going on, and this was just like
this was it felt like a standalone movie,
and it really was. And yeah. you mentioned it to me when we were watching it, which was it was just a character study of a guy going through PTSD,
and I thought they did a pretty good job showing the struggles of PTSD.
Well, especially for a character like Tony Stark, because the events in the Avengers was the first time that he felt like he wasn't in control.
Yeah.
And for him, it was like a real rude awakening for him, and it was him, even though they defeated the enemy at the time, he knows that there's so much more out there, and he knows there's stuff to be scared of.
Yeah, and the other interesting aspect of this movie is the villains and what he's dealing with in this movie almost seems like background noise to him.
Yeah.
To him fighting, dealing with the PTSD and dealing with not being in control. Yet there's a plot in this movie that moves it forward.
We need to get into the main plot is this takes place weeks, months after the events of the Avengers.
And in New York, yeah.
From New York, and Tony Stark is living in his Malibu home, and there are a series of bombings going on that a character played by Ben Kingsley is taking credit for, and that man's name is the Mandarin, who supposedly in the comic books is one of Iron Man's biggest villains.
Yeah, neither one of us have read the comics there.
That's on us, but at the same time, we're reviewing the movie, not the comics. But which I remember when I first started watching it, I was getting really excited.
I remember the previews.
Ben Kingsley,
and I remember being hyped, being like, Ben Kingsley is about to be the best villain.
My God. He's the parts that they show him as the Mandarin, he's crushing.
Yeah,
he's so good.
The voice and everything.
Yeah. When they described that he's like a Baptist preacher, and he was.
Yeah,
and it was the way he talked. I was like, man, this guy is menacing.
Yeah,
and I was into it. But basically, Tony Stark, while this is going on, he's having to deal. He's dealing with his PTSD derived from the events of the Avengers. And
basically, it's his past coming back to haunt him.
Right. As literally evidence of the opening scene in this movie is Tony Stark back in 1999 is in Switzerland. Oh, did you notice? This was a cool Easter egg that I liked, was the gentleman from the cave in the first one.
I don't even know if that's an Easter egg. Like, you were supposed to...
Yeah, no, but I thought... not Easter egg, but I found that interesting that they decided to play that back.
Yeah.
Because that guy in the cave, he makes mention, he's like, we met once in Switzerland.
And and he goes, and if I'd had that much to drink, I wouldn't have remembered it either.
Yeah. And Tony had been partying all night, and he ends up, he's infatuated, and he ends up hooking up with a botanist played by Rebecca Hall.
Who I really like.
I like as an actress a lot.
Yes.
And she's incredibly cute, and she is just a really good actress.
Yeah.
And so, but then it shows them talking, and they're at this like scientific kind of conference, and you're introduced to Guy Pearce, who is playing a guy named Richard Killian.
Yeah.
And Killian is, at this moment, back in 1999, he's walking with a cane and a limp. He's got
physical disabilities.
But he's coming to Tony Stark saying, "I have this idea for something." But basically, it was going to be the next big in his mind. In Guy Pearce's mind, it was the next big thing.
Yeah.
And Tony was like, yeah, I'll call you, I'll meet up with you or whatever. And he tells me, he goes, I'll meet you up on the roof. Well, Tony obviously was just trying to blow him off because he was trying to hook up with Rebecca Hall. Well, then that's over. It fast forward to present day, which is Richard Killian has become successful on his own with this technology called the Artemis.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah. And he's coming to Pepper this time, and he's saying this is like the next big thing. Basically, it's a way to just, he thinks there are flaws like in our DNA, and it was this technology that would basically just improve human function every which way.
Yeah.
So that's basically where you're jumping off from, and the whole rest of the movie is Tony basically coming into contact, realizing that there's more of an ulterior motive from Guy Pearce's standpoint, while also dealing with PTSD. And so basically, what ends up happening is that you're led to believe that Killian, his Artemis technology, is actually what the Mandarin is using for these explosions, these terroristic attacks that the Mandarin is taking credit for.
And you come to find out they've invented this story of the Mandarin to cover up the fact
that it's all Killian. It's all Guy Pearce's plan.
Well, and he's not he's covering up the failures of his company.
Yes.
By posing them as...
Because what is happening
terrorist attacks, because people are blowing up.
Yeah, it's these people that he's promising to kind of restructure or almost rebuild, because a lot of these are like veterans that have a disability. And they're taking... people
missing limbs, people that have been physically scarred, deformed, and he's come to them saying...
I've got something that'll help you.
Yeah.
And what happened, a lot of it...
And of course, it's experimental research, and he's working out the kinks, and the people blowing up...
Right, because they're taking too much of a dose or whatever.
Yeah.
And he then uses that as... he uses the Mandarin, who is basically... It's Ben Kingsley's... he's an actor who's pretending to be the Mandarin. Which, man, I didn't... You know what's funny is I actually didn't mind it. The plan itself actually was a decent plan, I thought, by Guy Pearce.
Oh, in terms of Guy Pearce's, his plan, it works.
And as far as all of
the scope of what he was trying to do.
That, but also all the Iron Man villains that we've been introduced to so far.
This is the most legitimate.
He had a plan. He also was out kind of for revenge on Tony, because but it wasn't even revenge. He basically makes it.
He needed Tony to help him, and when Pepper, he needed Tony's company to help him.
Yes.
When Pepper turned him down, he was like, "I'm just going to force I'm going to force the situation."
And he's more of he's a better villain, I thought, than his motives were more legitimate than the rest of the villains I've thought from the Iron Man movies.
From the Iron Man movies.
And once again,
the disappointing part was that the Mandarin wasn't real.
Yeah,
because
that was what we were just talking about. Is that when you were introduced to this character, I was so on board. I was like, fuck yeah, and it wasn't that I was mad. God, I'm about to sound like a parent, but it wasn't that I was mad. I was just disappointed.
Yeah.
I was so let down that it was just the reveal that the real bad guy was Guy Pearce was just disappointing.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at it, it really wasn't bad. No. Especially because...
Story-wise, it made sense, but just how much you wanted Mandarin and how the commercial... I remember before going into the movies and the commercials, basically... You saw all of the Mandarin in the trailers.
In the commercials.
In the commercials and trailers released prior to the movie. And he's not in it very much.
No.
But you sit there and you go, they got such a good actor to play the Mandarin. And he was, the voice and everything.
It was perfect.
Honestly, I remember seeing that trailer for the first time and him doing the voice. And I remember thinking very similar to the way I felt when you heard Heath Ledger's Joker voice.
Oh, easy.
Well, I'm just saying, I was really. It was a situation where
you bought in immediately.
Yeah, the villain got me hyped for the movie. I was like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah,
and I was like, I remember leaving the movie thinking, I wanted Ben Kingsley to be the villain.
Yeah, and that's really ultimately what I left.
And then nothing against Guy Pearce.
Well, see, that's what I was about to say. Is Guy Pearce, the personal opinion of mine, I think he is one of the most underrated and underused actors in Hollywood or in anywhere. Like, every time, almost every movie I see him in, I'm like, oh, like, I don't care if the movie gets bad reviews. I don't care if I think the movie looks shitty. I'm like, but Guy Pearce is in it. Like, there's something about Guy Pearce, and it's probably because, like, I was introduced to, like, Memento early on. LA Confidential is one of my favorite movies. Mm-hmm. Like,
he crushes almost every role he has.
Like, he's so good.
No matter how good or bad the movie is,
he's usually pretty committed, and he was committed in this, and he was good. But it's what happened that really kind of was a buzzkill for me. And I mean, that being said, even like, he's someone that actually was. It took Tony Stark's 13 Iron Man suits to defeat him. Like, he was a villain. He was someone that really was besting Iron Man.
Yeah,
which really hadn't happened in the other two Iron Man movies.
Yeah.
And this is, like you brought up, this because of he realized that this one person was almost able to defeat him, but he used 13 Iron Man suits. It's the mindset behind Ultron. Is that if I use my technology to build all these suits, we can defeat anyone without having to sacrifice any lives. It can just be my suits, my robots. Mm-hmm. You're right. That is something that plays into...
And the protection of his loved ones, mainly Pepper.
Gwyneth Paltrow, okay, this is...
I didn't like that aspect of the movie. When she gets, like, the powers.
Yeah, okay, well, first thing first, I just want to say, she worked out a lot for this movie, because there's one moment where she's, like, chained up, and her midriff is, like, exposed. She's got, like, abs, and I was like, she's like 50.
Yeah.
She looks good.
Yeah.
But okay, that was just a little joke. But
it's not a joke. She looked good.
She did look good, but, like, because I remember that was like the whole time I was like, oh, Gwyneth Pepper's back, whatever. But then I was like, Pepper's been working out. She's in shape.
She's looking good.
So
where you go, Pepper?
Yeah, I know. But then Killian injects his Artemis technology, whatever, into Pepper. So she now has this, and this Artemis technology basically is giving people, like, when they touch stuff, they can heat it up, melt things, like, really quickly. They also, like, Killian also has...
you're looking at it as a power, and I think it became a power, but it was a side effect. Ultimately, they were trying to regrow limbs.
Killian embraced it. once he
well,
saw
he
what
used
was,
it to his benefit. Yes,
but I mean, once you have that power, it's like you're not going to treat it as a side effect. Like, I almost took it as like it started out as technology to regenerate limbs, to cure some of these people that have a disability, and then once he realized what it was, he just ran with it. I didn't think it was like, oh man, it's just a side effect. Like, the moment he realized it was a power, he went with it.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was using that aspect of it to his benefit, but that was never his intent to create a super soldier.
Yeah, but that was my point. Is the moment he realized what it could do, it was like, yeah, I'm going this direction. Like, I'm not just gonna stop there.
Yeah.
And like, his main henchman is played by James Badge Dale, who, man, I wish he was in more stuff. He's always like in small parts here and there, and I liked him in Flight. He was good in, I mean, the main thing that I remember him from is Flight. He's only in it for like 5 minutes. He's a cancer patient. He's really good. But I thought he was solid in this, and he's someone...
He is solid in this. I thought a lot of the Rebecca Hall, him, the smaller roles, the kid.
The kid. Those, you brought it up, and
that's the most watchable parts of it. The most watchable parts of these movies, or this movie, to me,
is when he's in Tennessee
with the kid.
So Tony Stark, basically, he
calls out the Mandarin.
Yes,
and he said, "Come and here's my address. Come and find me." The Mandarin blows up.
And the Mandarin called his bluff and destroyed his house. And Tony
basically fakes his own death.
Essentially, yeah. He's the news. Everyone declares Tony Stark, Iron Man, dead. Jarvis, while Tony is knocked out because he was like he got like knocked out in the whole explosion.
The last thing he was doing was investigating these explosions.
He was investigating these bomb explosions, and the thing that was interesting about these Mandarin bomb explosions were that there was
always one person missing. The suicide bomber was
missing, but also there were no like bomb shell casings.
Yeah,
it was not your normal crime scene of a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And he was investigating something that was very similar but was not reported, a bombing that was very similar to a Mandarin bombing but was not reported.
And not claimed
by the Mandarin, and it was in Tennessee.
It was in Tennessee.
And that was the last location he was looking up, and Tony Stark is knocked out, and Jarvis is basically taking him to his last search location, which was Tennessee. So Tony Stark ends up meeting up with this kid.
Well, he breaks into a shed because he's been walking through the snow.
Yeah.
And so he breaks into the shed, and it's this kid's shed whose dad abandoned him.
And his mom is like working multiple jobs. Like, this kid's always alone working in his
he's
shed.
Kind of a loner.
But that was something else that kind of bugged me. What an amazing coincidence that this kid was like very scientific as well. You know, like, it's not that it was a problem per se, but it was like, what a coincidence. You know, like, this kid knew a lot of terminology that Tony Stark also was. When Tony Stark would say things that were somewhat scientific or technologically based, this kid would just know what he was talking about. Yeah. And this kid is supposed to be.
But I thought
like,
it played pretty well.
No, it was fine. It wasn't enough that I was like pissed off. But
there was a couple things in this movie that were highly coincidental.
There were tons of coincidences.
But I thought it played, again, his relationship with the kid played really well, and it helps the story. There's some lighthearted moments. The banter. Shane Black directing it.
Shane Black, and he co-wrote it. And this is actually what I'll say. This was a good Shane Black movie. It was a good action comedy with some heavy kind of dramatic elements to it. His PTSD, dealing with very serious issues, but the back and forth is very witty. It's quick. It's funny, and it's very.
It plays to Iron Man's strengths. But Iron Man has always been.
It's a good Shane Black movie. It's not a good Marvel movie.
Yeah, it's
like it's because it was very different in my opinion than a lot of Marvel movies.
It has a different feel for sure.
It's a standalone movie,
and it just doesn't. And honestly, it doesn't feel very much like I mean, besides the fact that there's Iron Man suits flying around everywhere, it doesn't feel like an Iron Man movie, really, per se.
But that being said, I thought there were a lot of the action sequences in this were better than the first two. Like, I thought Shane Black was better at directing action sequences than Jon Favreau was.
I'll give you that. I mean, the whole scene where his house is being
blown up. The end where the suits are all and Tony is jumping from suit to suit. Yeah. That was fucking dope. That was awesome. Yeah. When the Tennessee town was being blown up by James Badge Dale and the other, that was when you realized there were numerous like henchmen.
Yeah. You say it's not a good. I wouldn't say it's a bad Marvel movie. It just doesn't fall in line with the others.
So okay, that's fair. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not. It's just not. It's very out of place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it a bad movie, but it's like, I'm sure when people went into it, they were expecting just another Marvel movie, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And especially for them to start, this is the first movie after the Avengers. And for them, it probably threw people off guard because it almost felt like they were just restarting again.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it was almost like you're just learning more about a character. As opposed to just a continuation of the Avengers stories.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, because honestly, the rest of them are not really like that. But I just found it
weird because in my opinion, if you take it for what it is, it's not a bad movie at all. It's actually good.
It's really good.
And it's entertaining. The subject matter it deals with some deeper subject matter than other Marvel movies.
By far.
Deal with. And in terms of the PTSD, just the way the dealing with things with the PTSD almost gives it a darker, almost Batman-esque feel. The consequences to what he's having to deal. He's having to deal with being a superhero, which he's never really processed.
It was much more
before.
serious than the first two Iron Man, for sure. Because the Iron Man 1 and 2, even if he was in peril, it still was pretty lighthearted.
Yeah. Like, just the repercussions of him being a superhero.
In this, you were like, it was the first time where you were like really feeling for Tony.
Yeah. Like,
Tony, you always like him as a character because he's so witty, but he always does have like that. Just, I'm super rich. I don't have a whole lot of problems, except in the second one when he was dying.
Yeah.
But you knew he was going to get at it. Like, it was the first time where you're like, okay, this is something he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And you truly felt for this guy. Mm-hmm. And he felt like a normal guy. He didn't feel like the billionaire playboy philanthropist.
But again, and we say it's standalone, but because of how he feels in this movie, that's how we get Ultron.
Yeah. So, and that's what's... But up until that point, Ultron wasn't even a movie yet. So it is kind of cool that it was just like that little bit at the end was truly what was going to build towards the second Avengers movie.
I just mean in terms of his, not being in control, the PTSD, the not having to defeat what you don't know what's coming. I mean, that's the reason behind, that's his thought process behind Ultron. I mean, that's how he gets there. And the tinkering, like diving into his work and stuff like that. That's how we get Ultron. That's how he winds up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
But again, it's not like Ultron's introduced in this movie. It's that thought. At this point in time,
it was like
after watching all of these in order. I mean, we're going through and watching all these in order.
It's almost like Inception, where it was just like a very small idea that's been planted.
Yeah.
And that Tony was like, no, this is the way it needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
this was the small, like, you see the beginning of the idea.
Right.
And eventually we get there.
Yeah. But at the time, no one even knew. No one, like, it just felt like a standalone movie, which is, I mean, it really is what, if you go into it with that mindset, you probably would come out with a different, if you didn't like this movie, I think you would come out with, like, you'd look at it a little differently. If you looked at it like, if this was just a standalone movie.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, just a part of this huge puzzle. But it's hard to do that. because of what the rest of the Marvel movies do. But so we earlier we were talking about like coincidences in this movie. There are technically 3 twists in this movie. There's the Mandarin twist. There's the Mandarin twist that the Mandarin's not responsible. It's actually Guy Pearce. Mm-hmm. There is Rebecca Hall comes in halfway through the movie earlier than that, and she is acting as it was a friend. She was saying at this point Tony Stark was thought to be dead, and she comes to Tony Stark's house as the explosion of Tony Stark's house is happening.
Yeah.
Well, people think Tony Stark is dead, and Gwyneth Paltrow or Pepper took Rebecca Hall in, and Rebecca Hall is sitting there saying, "I think my boss is working for the Mandarin." Mm-hmm. And you realize that this whole time she's been working for Killian, and
she knows they need to be successful. She needs Tony's technology, and she doesn't feel like they're going about it the right way.
So the twist
is that she's
fully aware of the plan that Richard Killian is going on.
Yeah,
what's going on, and it's like, so she's.
But it's like 2 twists, and they weren't necessary because it was like she's pretending to be good, and then they flip it, and she's a bad guy.
But what she ultimately wants is she still wants.
She's in it for the science.
Not only that, she's also in it for. She definitely does want the idea of being able to the Artemis technology. Mm-hmm. She wants it for good. She's probably what Guy Pearce started out doing, and she's still in that mindset. But Guy Pearce is long past that, and Guy Pearce ends up killing Rebecca Hall. So the whole twist of her turning out to be bad was unnecessary. It could have just been that she was good the whole time.
And she dies defending
Tony Stark.
Which
it actually did.
Which would have made her good from the beginning. Like, the twist of her...
It was like, she's good. She's bad. She's good. In the span of 15 minutes. Like, it was like, why? It just didn't... You didn't have to have that twist for that death. If anything, that death would have been a little bit more emotional if she was good the whole time.
Yeah.
But it was like, there was a twist that she was bad, and it was like unnecessary. The other thing was...
The vice president.
Oh my god. So the vice president, turns out, the Killian's plan is to kidnap the president and basically, kill him on live television?
Yeah.
Basically, Killian's ultimate plan is to, both control chaos that's happening and how we're defeating it. So he's
playing both sides.
He's playing both sides, so he can't lose. And he'll just make a ton of money that way with the technology that he has and whatever.
It's very similar to the first Incredibles in his plan in that.
Yeah. That just changed my outlook on this movie. Wow. Did they just steal from a movie from 9 years prior? Damn it.
They stole from their own movie, though. It is Disney. They were just like...
I guess. Anyway... So, but that's his ultimate plan. So, you figure out that he was going to kidnap the president so he could kill him on live television, and I guess just create chaos. I can't remember. Was there an ulterior goal to that? It was just to jumpstart his whole plan. Mm-hmm. But what's revealed that was unnecessary is that his
access to the president
was because
through
of
the vice president.
Vice president, who is I don't even think you learn the guy's name.
No,
he's just vice president.
Yep. And he has access to the vice president because the vice president has a daughter that's missing a leg.
Yeah. It felt very forced.
Yeah.
It felt like they had the plan of kidnapping the president, but were like, oh, fuck, how are we going to do this? No, let's just make it so the vice president's kid has a missing leg. He wants the technology so her leg will grow back and yada, yada, yada. He's a bad guy. Yeah. I just could not believe. I was like, that was just so forced. That was truly a case of they had an ending. They needed a story to justify the ending.
Yeah.
Which is kind of lazy. It felt shoehorned. And that, those two twists, the Mandarin twist is more disappointing. the vice president and the Rebecca Hall twist were unnecessary and kind of they just pissed me off.
I don't even want to. It didn't make me mad. To me, I was indifferent with both twists, but I was just like, why?
But that's kind of what pissed me off. I was like, they were just unnecessary. Like, you just moved past, like, the Rebecca Hall thing, you didn't have
It was like background. And, yeah, it was just...
Well, also, so...
I mean, I guess if you don't have the vice president thing, you don't have the cool scene with them jumping out of the plane and him...
which is another dope action sequence. That's also when you're introduced to the thing where Tony Stark can control...
First of all, hold on. It was about this time period when all of these movies said, let's have scenes with people jumping out of planes.
Like in, are you talking...
This movie,
Dark Knight
Dark Knight Rises, Godzilla, Fast and the Furious. It was like, they all went on a kick. They're like, what's the coolest action thing we can do? Let's jump out of a plane.
Yeah, but they're... Yeah, that's fair. I
mean, obviously Dark Knight Rises does it best, I think.
I guess they started it, right? Yeah, because Dark Knight Rises was 2012.
This was all around... This
was 2013.
But they would have been made around the same time.
I know. But, see, I thought this one was pretty effective. I liked the whole thing. This actually did make me laugh, because what ends up happening is on Air Force One ends up blowing up, and there were 13 passengers on the plane, excluding the president, because the president has been taken away by Killian.
Yeah.
And there's 13 passengers that are just free falling, and Tony Stark has to go and get them. And what he does is he links them all together, and he's basically skydiving with them, and he gets them. Well, then he yanks them up.
He slows them down enough so they can hit the water.
So they can hit the water and land safely. The thing is, though, if you really look at it, they were free falling, and then it's at the last second he puts on his jetpacks or whatever. So he's flying across the water roughly, let's say, I'm being generous.
Conservative.
At least 80, 70 miles per hour.
That's conservative.
Okay, so these people hit the water and they're like cheering and whatever. That would fucking hurt.
I mean, if anybody's ever been water skiing, wakeboarding, tubing behind a boat,
if you fall off a tube
going 40
at tops,
it hurts.
Yeah, you're like but it's not like it's nothing that would really affect you. Like I would
fall off and you're like damn.
Yeah. It's like god damn.
And that's at 40. They're going at least double that.
At least double that. And they're just like, yeah. It's like, no, you would hurt. That would hurt.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking they should have shown someone
some of those people were old, man.
Some of those people were like, my leg! I broke my leg! But then Tony Stark...
and they're like, yeah!
Tony Stark just hightails it out of there. He's like, well, let's get out of here.
I mean, he saves them. Mission accomplished.
Oh, baby dough. But, okay, so... We're getting towards the end here. So, Tony Stark then, he goes through the whole thing where that's where you discover that Ben Kingsley is actually a British actor. Mm-hmm. That is, he's not really the Mandarin. He's just an actor who is so drugged up and crazy that he doesn't even think that these bombings.
Yeah, and the Sunset Boulevard reference that takes place.
Well, that's at the very end, where he's he knows that he's done all this bad stuff, and people are taking pictures of him in video, and he's so infatuated with the fame that he doesn't care what he's done.
Yeah.
Even though technically he hadn't done anything except for...
Well, he didn't even know he was doing... He thought it was all an act.
Yeah, which is nuts to begin with. You would think, and I guess...
Well, he was so out of it.
Yeah, he was out of it.
Reclused away,
Well, no, remember, they had him... they had him hidden, and he was all by...
They gave him everything he wanted, but
he had a drug problem, and they said, we'll give you more drugs.
Yeah, they fueled his addiction.
Yeah.
And he was basically... just surrounded himself with women, drugs, and alcohol. And,
the life,
yeah,
right?
No. Playing ping pong. Apparently.
Yeah, that was crazy too. That was we'll just play ping. It's all this crazy shit going on. Oh, and a ping pong table. So, that happens, and basically Pepper is kidnapped by Killian, and that's ultimately where Tony's like, oh, I have to go confront Killian, is because he has Pepper. And they inject Pepper with the Artemis technology.
Yeah, because they don't know. It's unstable at this point.
Yeah.
And they don't know if it's going to work or not. And they basically tell Tony, we don't know if she's going to live or die. You have to help us to save her.
And he, of course, through fighting and doing whatnot, he's able to get Pepper free. And he has Pepper on a ledge, and he's like trying to get her. And Pepper falls into this flame. And
it's me and you. I remember watching the movie.
Actually, dude, I thought that would have made the movie even better. Is if Pepper had died. I think that could have made.
I know, and I'm sure there's people out there going to be like, "That's blasphemy. That's not." In terms of character development, character depth,
I think yes. I think
it would have taken it would have taken him to a much darker place, and so
which I guess that's something that I thought would have been fascinating.
Yeah,
to
but
see
again,
Tony Stark.
Where does that? I mean, it would have fed Ultron immensely, and again, we don't know what the comics are like.
But that would have been, yes, that was my thing.
All of a sudden, Ultron in Civil War become...
It's because his idea is like, if I had these robots there at the time, like they
would have protected her.
They could have protected her.
They could have saved her. And I thought that would have played for some... And again, this is Disney Marvel movie.
They weren't. I don't think they were going to go that. No, they weren't going to go that dark.
And Pepper keeps him stable-minded. And with him being the most beloved character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
you need that stability.
He needs this stability.
So, but then it's revealed because she has this technology in her. All these people who have been injected with this are able to like melt things. They can deal with intense temperature.
Yeah, and they can regrow limbs, and they can't get hurt.
So at the end,
after falling 200 plus feet into a flaming oil rig, freight rig, or I don't even know exactly what it is.
Basically, Tony Stark is about to get killed by Killian.
Yeah.
And then Pepper comes out of the carnage, and she knocks out Killian, and then basically destroys him with her powers. Which, if I'm being honest, I think Gwyneth Paltrow spent 2 movies complaining, I don't get to do anything badass. And then this movie was like, fine. We'll give you this power and you can kill this guy. Does that power ever come back?
No, they mentioned it at the end that Tony was like, I was able to get it out of her. It took some tinkering.
That's
but I was
right.
able to get it out of her.
Because I was about to say, I was like, I swear to God, if she wasn't killed and she comes back and in Endgame she's the one that kills Thanos, I'm walking out of the
I mean, we all know how Thanos is going.
Listen, Ant-Man's gonna get real small. Real small. No.
And it's funny that you had this idea.
Well, I mean, it was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah,
it was something that I was like, what if that happened? And then it's like become this big...
Because you came up with this. This was like 6 months ago.
It was a joke. Yeah, it was something that I was just like, what if Ant-Man got so small, just climbed up,
and then boop,
and then just exploded? Like it would work.
How can you defeat
it? It would work.
And now it's become
it's a joke,
and now it's
literally everyone's making a joke about it. But I think though it didn't piss me off. I thought it was fine. It was okay that Gwyneth Paltrow killed Tony Stark killed Killian that way.
Yeah.
But it also, that's how I took it. It felt like Gwyneth Paltrow was mad that she didn't have a badass scene, and that this was a way to give her a badass scene. Because it wasn't like the technology killed Killian, or it wasn't like Tony Stark's technology killed Killian. It was Killian's technology that killed Killian. Like it was. Because that, I think, would have, if it was Tony Stark's tech that finally was able to contain and kill Killian, because it did to a point. He put Killian in an Iron Man suit and exploded him.
Self-destructed the suit.
And you would think, I remember thinking, that's it. That's how he killed him. That really justifies Ultron. But then no, he lived through that, and then it was Pepper who basically hits him in the face and then like stabs him through the chest and just kills him. I just thought it was just a weird ending.
A couple times.
It was a weird. I thought it was just a weird ending. It didn't feel. It almost felt like that wasn't what they wrote as the ending. Personally, that's just what I think.
But I almost feel like they wrote her dying, and then they wrote 2, and they were like gave it to Disney, and
they were like, "Oh, no. We've signed her on. We've signed her on for a couple more movies, so she can't die."
But no, I did. The ending just, it was kind of like, okay, he's done with his PTSD.
That was kind of dumb too.
The other thing
you don't just get done with PTSD.
The other thing I didn't necessarily like, or that was kind of brought to light, was, oh, we're just gonna take that thing out of Tony's chest now. He doesn't need it.
Oh yeah, that was such a second thought.
You could have been like, wait. He could have had this done like,
because in the first 2 movies, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
With that thing in his chest is keeping him, he's surviving. And then he's like, oh, he has this surgery that takes it out, and he got all the stuff out, and he's fine. And I understand it was supposed to be a symbol. It was supposed to remind him, like, where he came from. But it's like, if it's killing you, dude, just, like, go get a surgery. Go get surgery to remove it. You'll be fine. You've been through enough of a traumatic experience that you know you're not going to change.
Yeah.
Just have the surgery, bud. You don't got to die because it's a symbol. I'm also going to die in 2 weeks. Like, just remove it. I thought that was lame. That was lame. Because that literally happened in the last 5 minutes. It just showed him having surgery and that he was fine. And it was like, that was such an afterthought. That, I mean, just came out of nowhere. Like, that was the main story of the second one. That they just nullified in the last 5 minutes of the third one.
Yeah.
That was frustrating. That was the thing. This movie, I actually really did like this movie. I liked the direction they went with the whole PTSD and the just Tony Stark having like an internal struggle. I actually truly appreciated that.
And actually him investigating him being in Tennessee,
that was
investigating what was going on with the kid.
Borderline detective. And there were also times he had to deal with he didn't have Jarvis and he didn't have the technology he was used to, so he had to. It showed how Tony Stark was smart and creative and was able to do. It just showed off how capable he was even without Jarvis and the technology he had.
Yeah, like his fight with the girl that was scarred, like, and he's
just real quickly he basically caused an explosion by throwing. You know, like
the dog tags in the microwave, the gas,
opening the gas.
But it was quick thinking on his feet. Yeah,
and so that means there were things,
and it was him coming to realization, like, you know, he still can affect. He doesn't need a suit to affect things.
Yeah,
like he can still.
I thought there were a lot of elements of the movie that I liked, but there were also some parts, and the parts that bugged me really did kind of bug me. But it doesn't make it a bad movie. Like this one, I definitely liked it more than Iron Man 2. I probably liked it more than Thor and maybe Incredible Hulk.
I agree. But
you know,
it's weird because it just doesn't.
It doesn't feel like your normal Marvel movie.
No.
Which in a way you can appreciate, but you know,
at the same time, it's
so. Like overall, I think I would give this a B. I think it was solid. You know, like nothing was like crazy good, but it wasn't enough that I was like, oh, I love this movie. And I'm fresh off watching it. Like I'm still like literally 2 hours ago, I was in the middle of watching this movie for the first time. So this is truly my like first reaction. But yeah, I think overall I would give this like a B. I think it was
I'm
solid.
In the same boat. It teeters between a B and a B plus for me, but I have to lean more towards just
a B.
A B.
There's too many.
But I'm with
man.
you. I think, and again, it's tough to rank them. Like we're actually gonna have to sit down and actually think about it. But I would put this above Thor, and I would put it above
Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2 for sure, and I would possibly the Hulk. Well, definitely the Hulk.
Well, see,
I think I like Thor more than I like the Hulk.
Something that probably helped out with me is because I hadn't seen it, but I have heard people discuss it and talk about it, and some people really trash this movie. And I understand if you're a comic book fan, because apparently the Mandarin is this huge villain for Iron Man, and they basically they bring him up and throw him away so quickly in this movie. It'd be like doing that for the Riddler in Batman or the Joker in Batman. It would just be like, oh, he's really not the villain.
Because I remember at the time I worked with a kid who was really excited to see this movie, and he was telling me like the Mandarin's he's in the comics, he's one of Iron Man's like main
villains.
Yeah, and he was so disappointed when he went to
and
the
I
movie.
could see,
and he hated it. He came out of the movie. I remember talking to him after. This was another one that I saw.
I think a lot of people were
came out.
bugged by that. I think a lot of people were bugged by that.
He came back and he was like, he almost
was furious.
Oh, he was pissed.
Yeah, but that's where I'm saying I'm just judging it by the movie.
And again, because I haven't read the comics, I have to take these movies as just
face
that.
value. Yeah, just like what the movie is showing me, and do I like it or not? And I like this movie. I liked Iron Man 3 a lot.
And of the movies so far that we've
right now I'd probably put it middle of the road. Because we've done...
It's like we said, we named the ones it was better than. It's better than Thor, better than Iron Man 2, better than the Hulk.
I'd probably put it on par. I'd probably put it, as far as movie goes, I'd probably put it on par with Captain America. I know you really like Captain America.
No, I like Captain America. To me, it's right below the first Captain America. But I mean, it's close. It's in the same tier of movies, I think. Obviously, it's not as good as the Avengers. It's not as good as the first Iron Man. But it's solid, and it feels like if you've seen any other Shane Black stuff,
it feels that way. Yeah,
it feels like a Shane Black movie.
It sucks because Shane Black for me, because Shane Black's done Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, he's done The Nice Guys, he wrote the first Lethal Weapon. Like, he has made some of the best cop buddy movies. The back and forth between two people is usually so funny and so clever. He
played a pivotal role in Robert Downey's.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang got Robert Downey basically Iron Man.
Yeah,
because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was the first movie back from him being just like a raging partier, and this was a movie that got him. People were like, "Oh, Robert Downey's good," and apparently he's clean now. Mm-hmm. And literally 3 years later. He was in the theaters as Iron Man. Mm-hmm. Like, that was the beginning of his redemption tour. And I wonder if
I was really excited when he signed off. When I heard he was doing
because I loved Kiss Kiss Bang Bang a lot. And the first Lethal Weapon's a classic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're all good, but the first one's amazing. But anyway, he did fine with Iron Man 3. I thought he may have not been close to the comics. It may have, may have pissed some people off. But as far as a standalone movie, I thought it was good.
I did too.
I thought it was good. So
I thought it was.
We'll leave it at that. And our next movie is Thor 2.
The Dark World.
This is